Hey guys, it's Nate and this is the Nader Tater channel. Today's video I'm going to cover how I made this live edge bench. I had this piece of wood actually made from a guy that was buying some lumber from me. He has a sawmill, so he cut it for me for free. It's about 2 inches thick. And then I made the metal legs. They're made out of 3-inch by 1.5 inch rectangular tube. So I cut those. I'll go through how I did that. And then I just did a polyurethane finish on the top of it. And so it's about 17.5 inches high off the ground. And then this piece is 5 feet long and it varies in width. It's about 18 inches wide, give or take. But for this, the metal I used, I bought new, and it was about 30 bucks of metal between the rectangular tube and the flat plate that I used. A couple bucks for the lag screws that I attached them to the wood, and then a couple bucks for the urethane finish on top of it. So all said, I have less than 40 bucks into it, and let me walk you through how I put it together. This is a 5 foot long slab. It's about 2 inches thick, maybe a little bit thicker. This is red oak, and then it's about 18 inches wide, and it's a live edge, meaning that it still has the bark on it. And for this, I'm going to keep it very rustic, so I'm not going to do a lot of finishing to it. I'll take a sander to it and clean up the top surface so you don't get splinters. But you know, it's popular often to do a scraping where you scrape off much of the bark. I'm going to leave the bark on there, and then I'll polyurethane it at the end. For the legs, I'm going to use some steel pieces. I like working with metal just as much as wood, so for this I'm going to use a 3-inch by 1.5 inch pipe, or I guess it's a tube actually, rectangular tubing, and it's a 16 gauge wall, so it's not very thick, but doesn't need to be a whole lot. And for this I'm going to make two, you know, basically if I look at it upside down, be 2 U shapes. So I'll cut 45s of the angles, and then to get it to attach to the actual the wood, I'm going to use some of this 1/4 inch by 1.5 inch flat bar, and this I'm just going to weld to the end of the rectangular tube so I can have a couple places I can screw vertically into the wood. So the first step is to cut this rectangular tube, and to do that I want the seat to be you know, somewhere around 18 inches high, maybe 16 to 18. You can play with it to see. You know, a lot of dining tables are around 18 inches, but sometimes benches might be a little bit lower. So I'm going to cut those, and then cut the plate, and then I'll get going on actually sanding and finishing up the wood. So let's start there. Okay, now I'm just going to give it a quick sand. This is the bottom side, so it's definitely the roughest. I'm just going to sand it a little bit where I know I'm going to put the legs and kind of the edges, but the most of it can just stay kind of saw cut. So this is a belt sander. I'm using a 36 grit, so it's a very aggressive grit sandpaper. Okay, so now this is the top side, and I picked the top side because the bark you know, is wider on the bottom than the top, and that's just going to be a little bit smoother. If you were to hit your legs with it, it's going to be going with your legs instead of having the sharp angle at the top. Okay, so now I have it sanded on the top, and I clean it off. I'll do a little bit of touch up by hand, but like I said earlier, I'm going to leave all this bark as it is, so kind of raw. I'll have to blow it off well so I can get all the dust off. But then I'll be ready to put some coats of polyurethane. Okay, now we're inside. We got it sanded and blown off all the dust and wiped it off. You can see I have some other projects going on in the barn. You can see my other videos for that. Subscribe for other projects I'm doing. For this one, I'm going to use a exterior. It's a varnish that's satin, and it has a little bit of colors. It's semi-transparent. They call it natural cedar, but so that's what I'm going to use, and I'm just going to wipe it on here. You can use any exterior grade. I mean, if you're using it inside, obviously you can use it interior grade. But for me, I'm going outside, so I'm using this. It's going to give a little bit of an orange brown tint to it to pull out the grain. Like I said, I'm just going to go right over the bark as well. So I've got to get kind of a wet edge to really fill in all these areas. Okay, so I'm finishing up the top now. I already did the bottoms and the edges, and then it takes about 12 hours for it to dry, and then you can put a second coat on if it needs it. You know, the end grains obviously are certainly the places that soak up the most, and then this bark, you know, I might go in here with a paper towel and dab some of the pulling areas because you know, this varnish stuff doesn't like to pull up, so I might clean that up a little bit. Otherwise, just let it dry. While it's doing that, I'm going to work with the metal, weld that stuff together. So when this is dry, those things are ready to go on. Okay guys, so I have it on the chop saw now, and I measured 14.5 inches, and one side is going to be square, the other side is going to be a 45. That way I'll make you know, the vertical and the horizontal be 45s together, just kind of give it a cleaner look. So I set this up at 45, and now we're ready to cut. There we go. The first cut. So now I need to make 4 of these like this, and then I'll make another piece with 45s on both sides, and that will be the bottom. So I make 2 of those. Okay, so now I'm making the bottom, and so the bottom one has 2 45s on it, and I'm making these all 14.5 inches. And so I just use this as a template to draw that, have it set up. Now I'm ready to cut. So here's this one, and it's 14.5. Sorry, it's 14.5 from long edge to long edge with 2 45s. So I need a total of 2 of these and a total of 4 of these for one bench. Okay, so now I have all my pieces cut. I got 2 of the flat stock, I got 2 of the double 45s, and 4 of the single 45 and 1 flat. And you know, so this flat edge is going to go up against the wood, and then I'll weld this like that so that I get drill a hole in here, so I have a way to screw that to the wood. Okay, So now I have these 1/4 inch thick pieces cut and cleaned up a little bit. and I made them 1.5 inches longer on each side, so 6 inches long total. You know, the tube is 3 inches long, and they're the same width. Now I'm going to use these short 2-inch lag screws, and for them they're 1/4 inch. So I'm drilling a 1/4 inch hole, and I'm doing it 1/2 inch from the edge on each of these. So that's what I'll do now. Okay, so there's one. Okay, so now all my pieces are cut. I clean them up a little bit for welding. And I have my holes drilled in my plate pieces. So now I set up the legs. Again, I have straight edge and 45, and then 2 45s on this bottom one. And now I put some magnet squares in there to try to get things lined up, and then additionally, you know, measuring corner to corner, make sure that they're square. That's obviously very important for these legs to be square. So I have them all set up, or at least this one's set up and it's ready to be tacked. So I'm gonna go ahead and get it tacked. Okay, so I'm not an expert welder. I'm decent. You know, these are my MIG welds. They're pretty good. I'm not some fancy TIG welder, but the joke I like to go by is a grinder and paint make the welder I ain't. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna grind these flat, and then we're gonna paint them. We'll prime them and paint them, and then we'll be ready to put them on. So let me get to grinding. Okay, so now they're cleaned up, and I'm just going to do a primer on them first, and then a black, this is a semi-gloss paint, and before I do the primer, I'm going to wipe it down with a wet rag with some brake clean, just to get any of the grease and glaze off of it. Okay, so now we have it dry. We got the legs painted. So now I laid them out. I have them about 6 inches from the edge of each side. That's to the bar stock. So from the actual rectangular tube, it's about 7.5 inches. That's what looks about right. I have no real logic to it. And then I have center front to back. bit, and then I will use the drill bit to do a pilot hole, and then I'll be running these 2-inch long lag screws in there. Now I have those marked. I'll go ahead and drill. Okay, so now we're gonna put these lag screws in. I'm not gonna make them all tight until I get them all started at least. Okay, so for me, I'm going to put mine outside, so I don't really need these little feet. I'm going to put these feet on anyways, just if I put it down in the concrete or whatnot, I don't want to scratch up the paint. I'm still not fully cured yet. It takes 24 hours, so I'm just going to throw these little felt pads on there. That'll protect it for when I put it down here on the concrete for the time being. Now it is pretty heavy. Okay, there we have it. There's the garden bench.